Hello there.
Hey everybody, it's Ed, and this is a very special Boosting the Signal celebrating all things Star Wars. That's right, we're gonna go a little different than we normally do. It's May the 4th, and my guest this week for this special Star Wars celebration is internet personality, cosplayer, and big time Star Wars fan, Ceres Bathory. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Bad, not too bad. Glad we're having this. It's May the 4th, and we've got to celebrate Star Wars in the best way we possibly can. So let's start off with a little variation of my questions that I ask people usually instead of what's your Star Trek story? What's your Star Wars story? What brought you to the Star Wars universe?
So I've been watching Star Wars ever since I can remember. My family, my grandma actually would talk about how she would actually take my aunt and uncle, or not my aunt and uncle, my mom and my uncle, she would actually take them out of school to go see it with my entire family. So like her mom, her brothers, everyone, it was a whole family event. And I do actually have like they've shown me pictures where they're actually like at a Burger King meeting Chewie and getting his signature. And then my uncle has like a whole collection of old school Star Wars toys and everything. So it's definitely like in the family. But it's also extra special because my birthday is on May 14th, which is the same birthday as George Lucas. So in a way,
Wow.
I was kind of born to be a Star Wars fan. And
Well,
I've
that's
just
awesome.
always loved Star Wars ever since. It saved my life several times. So just it's an amazing world to just escape into.
That is good. I didn't realize that Chewbacca hung out in Burger Kings. I'm gonna have to start checking there more often. But maybe he thought it was Kashyyyk. Who knows? That's fan of the Whopper. Hopefully not made of Wookiees.
Right,
But
yeah.
that's great. Now yeah, I didn't even think about George Lucas's birthday being a Star Wars holiday. But I guess as a Star Trek fan, we celebrate the birthday of Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek. So it makes sense. And you couldn't ask for a better birth date. That's
No, I
awesome.
could not have.
I was gonna say now, what was your first like Star Wars film? What was the thing? I assume it was a film. I guess nowadays there's series out there. What was your first like exposure to it?
So again, like they would actually play it for me, like of course from VHSs and stuff growing up. So I've seen it growing up. My first movie in theaters, though, of course, was The Phantom Menace.
Okay.
I know the prequels get a lot of hate, but for me, that was my first initial experience of being able to kind of be part of the phenomenon, right? Because my family had talked about it. I watched the originals and stuff like that, but like for such a long time, there wasn't really much Star Wars. And then the prequels happened, and then it was like a huge major boom again. And I got to be part of it during that time. And so it meant so much to me. Like my whole family would go, we would all go to watch it. And it was just so much fun to be part of it and to kind of see the story play out like
That's great.
live.
I remember going to see the Phantom Menace in theaters myself. It was a mixed bag of good and bad memories, not because of the movie. I mean, I walked out of the theater loving it. I think I let time, people, and opinions change my opinion of the film. But the day that it came out, I remember being so excited, so happy. Yeah, Star Trek guy, but like you, I grew up with Star Wars. I remember going to see them in theaters, and I'm gonna assume that I probably saw the Holy Trilogy in theaters long before you did. Um, but yeah, those are good memories. Those are good memories of Phantom Menace. And has your opinion of the movie changed? I mean, like you said, it does get a lot of shit, but has your opinion changed?
Actually, no. So because for me, it was like I was the same age as Anakin watching that movie. So I was a kid. Like it was so exciting to experience Star Wars also in a whole new way. I mean, the pod racing, of course, was so different, right? Because we've kind of seen the Millennium Falcon do some cool tricks in space, of course, but we never seen something like that, right? And it was kind of also the beginnings of the origins of like Jedi and midichlorians and all of those things were all kind of starting to come out, right? The more deeper lore into Star Wars and the species and stuff that was there, but for me, that was my more introduction to a lot of the deeper meanings into Star Wars and the beginnings of Jedi and the world of Star Wars, right? Because he's a slave, you know? And then of course we see this young naive girl who's a queen have to navigate what the rest of the universe is and what it's like for other people. And I think experiencing that is just very unique, even in today's Star Wars like universe, to have those experiences of like a naive girl learning about slavery in the universe, you know, and what a complete, you know, change that was probably for her. I mean, I've read the book, so like I know for so that's also hard as I've read so many of the books that I know a lot of the behind the stories too of the movie that has also helped. Like I read Master and Apprentice, which was about Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. I've read the not Queen's Shadow. I forgot what the Amidala books were. So for me, I also just they've also expanded on that movie quite a bit. So it's definitely interesting to see how much more there was even to that like 3 hour movie that you can still continue to explore. Even if you've seen it a million times, you start reading the books, you can, you know, watch this like the Clone Wars series and see that, you know, Maul comes back. You can still learn so much about even just that first movie that when you first watched it, you didn't know. So I think it's just that's what's interesting though, is because usually movies are very much like you've seen it, you know it all. But with that one, they're still expanding on it, which I just think is like really unique and really awesome.
Yeah, I no, you spoke about one of the more decisive things in the Star Wars franchise was the Metachlorians. I do remember when I saw it, at the time I was I was 22 when that came out in theaters, and I remember thinking to myself, "What?" Like, what's a Metachlorian? And um, in a way, I have to say, and I'm not gonna harp on it, but I will say that at the time I didn't care for it. I thought it was weird, a different change. Things have kind of progressed to the point where it makes more sense now. It's not there's I mean even some would say like okay if you look at like Last Jedi would be a good example. I love Last Jedi and I will defend it till the very end. But there's people that hate it. I get that. It's like the prequels. But to me like it introduced the idea that anyone could be a Jedi as long as they are I don't know how to I'm not a religious person, so I don't really know how to really put it into words, but to say like believe and have faith, and accept, and they accept that the energy around them and so on and so forth. To quote Obi-Wan, it's like an energy field that surrounds us, and so and I kind of get that, but the metachlorians were really difficult to understand in 1999 at the time. So I want to shift gears. But I want to say before I do, like the metachlorians, you grew up with it. So for you, it's
Mhm.
normal. When you
Yeah.
got to the Holy Trilogy, as it were, was it different? Did you understand like why aren't we talking about metachlorians? Where's the metachlorians? Or was that not something that ever occurred to you?
Well, I think what is interesting is that in a way we saw a collapse of a society within the prequels, right? And so with that, I feel like there are certain things that when collapses of society happen, that when the Empire took over, maybe they didn't want Mediterraneans being known. And that way, when people hunted for them or get hunted down because they had them, it was less understanding of why. So it was easier to kind of catch them because you don't know why you're being taken. You don't know why they're targeting you, right? Because they would go after Jedi.
Right.
And if you don't know that you have them, how can you start to build on the idea that you're powerful? And so I think in a way they buried it. And
Okay.
so it makes sense in that way that they buried that entire kind of philosophy, right? The Jedi philosophy, the Sith philosophy in a lot of ways. And it makes sense if you go and watch the originals, even though like technology of course has changed and everything. And but you can tell that like it's just a different mentality when it comes to Jedi. There's so much more unknown, whereas in the prequels there was so much known. And so for me it just makes sense that they buried it. They
Yeah.
buried what Metachlorians are, that they wanted to keep it a secret because they didn't want them rising up again.
You bring up a good thought, and it makes me think about like you're making me think because, and you're probably dead on. If you think about like the vastness of the galaxy, and the Star Wars universe, it's like you run into people all the time that have never heard of Jedi and they've never heard of Luke Skywalker. And that is one thing that is really nice about Star Wars is it does have an expanded universe where people exist that have never heard of Luke, they've never heard of Darth Vader, and that's great. Whereas in Star Trek, that is something we are lacking. In Star Trek, everybody has a problem with the Enterprise. Everybody's heard of Picard. It's like how big is the universe? Apparently, it's wee tiny, but in Star Wars, it does have that vastness to it, and I get that. Um, and you may be right about suppressing the information so that people weren't aware. I like that. I like that thought. And also, it does give credence to, like, if you think about, like, I don't even expanded universe, like video games, like the Jedi Survivor games and stuff. It really delves into it more, and why was Cal Kestis being hunted and everything else. Good thought. Good thought. I like that. But and honestly, I think that's always the best if someone can make you think something differently. Um, now, when you talk about like the books and stuff, so in the expanded universe, is that what was that exactly what it's called now? Is it expanded? Is it Legends? I'm not really sure the terminology Disney wants us to use at this point.
I honestly have no idea.
Uh,
Because there's just so much now at this point, right? And it's like, and it's crazy to think too, because I remember growing up and being and asking my grandma, why didn't they continue Star Wars? Like, why won't there be any new video movies and stuff before the prequels obviously happened? And she always told me that one of the reasons why George Lucas didn't want to create sequels or whatever is because people had already created stories for Luke and Leia
hmm,
and Han Solo and like all of them, right?
right.
And so he didn't want to kind of hurt them and say, "Oh, you're wrong. That's not what really happened." That was what my grandma always told me. But I know that there were canon books before Disney took over, before the prequels and stuff like that. And so many of them, it's like, well, they were canon. Are they no longer canon now? Now
Yeah.
that like I think Del Rey does a lot of the Star Wars books, I could be completely wrong. But in the new versions, like there is the Princess and the Scoundrel, I believe it's called, that is Han and Leia's story. But they've had so many stories before that. So does that correlate with all those books or not? And I know that there's like a huge mixture and like a lot of people were like, yes, they're still canon. No, they're not. And I think that for me, it's such a world that we have expanded on and really delve into different corners and the deep end in a lot of ways. For me, I think it's whatever you choose, to call it, to describe it, to whatever you choose is canon or not, because it's such an expanded universe at this point, and so many people have created fan fiction for it. And so it's kind of like what story you choose to see as canon, right? Or like I say expanded universe just because it's easier to say. I know like there's legends, there's so many different technicalities, right? Or like wording and
Different
logistics that go into
nomenclature.
all
I
of
get you.
that.
Yeah. I yeah, there's so many things that were great in the old books, like Mara Jade and Jason Solo and stuff like that, that should have been I don't know. In a way, I guess Jason kind of was with Ben. You know, they if you look hard enough, it does feel like Jason a little bit, um, but not at the same time. I loved Ben Solo. I think I liked Kylo Ren. Um, I I don't want to say the terminology. I like the bad boys, but I do tend to gravitate towards the evil, side or the dark side. Like I was always a Darth Vader guy. I liked Han Solo because he was a scoundrel. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm a Han Solo guy. I'm a Boba Fett guy. Literally every Black Series figure I own is a Mandalorian.
Nice.
But yeah, I have no idea where I was going with this. But I just I know that Mara Jade was something that I wish that they would have incorporated into the franchise. Like, I know Luke was all broken and distraught by Jedi, Last Jedi, and I realized that, but there was so much time in between. Could we not have had like a throwaway line somewhere where like, his wife, mention Mara, mention, something like that. He had this school. We have not had a throwaway line for Jason. I know we went with Ben. I get that. But like something that would have I think it would have appeased everyone a little bit more. But
Well,
anyways,
I think it's also hard because when you look at the originals, right? They don't mention the necessarily rules of Jedi, right? They reintroduced it in the sequels.
yeah,
In the prequels, there was hardcore rules, right? But the thing is that for me is that like for instance, Ben's not Ben, yeah, Obi-Wan, he had a love interest and someone that he could have ended up with. If you've
yeah.
seen the Clone Wars, then
Oh yeah,
you know. But in the sequels, they don't talk about the rules of the Jedi. And I wonder what it was like in that universe where Jedi could exist could love. And I think that's an interesting thing that they didn't explore on, and they still haven't necessarily explored on, right? They have a few times in some of like I think the TV series, as far as like I think the Clone Wars, there's a little bit of that in like a few of the episodes, and maybe even Rebels. But we haven't fully understood what it is like for a Jedi with no rules, because that philosophy has completely changed in a way because they don't have people telling them these are what you're supposed to do, this is what you're not supposed to do, right? I mean, it kind of was left to Luke, but Luke didn't get that training either.
no,
So, and how does that change Jedis in general? Because that was the whole thing, right? Anakin had to hide his love and that kind of turned him in a way to the dark side because of what he chose and how he chose it. And if he had been more open to it, would there have been more options and, choices for him? And so in the news, like in the expanded universe or, whatever you want to call it, like, what is it like? And so I think it would have been interesting to show Luke having, a love interest and stuff like that. And maybe they will continue that in a different way. And to see like all the other Jedi's and stuff having love interests and stuff like that. Like that's become very much unknown after the prequels.
I think the thing that really killed Anakin, I've always thought not killed Anakin, but like his character, I always thought like he was accused of, excuse me, being kind of a whiny little bitch, and well, but here's my thought on that. He didn't really have. I mean, he had Obi-Wan. He had as a father figure raising him. We don't know how good of a father figure Obi-Wan was. And to me, it was kind of like, I want it this way, I want it this way. Was there something lacking in his raising, in the way he was raised? Maybe he really was too old to be trained. I don't know. Um, there's a lot of subtexture in that there. I don't know.
Yeah, see, if you read Master and Apprentice, which is about Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon,
Okay.
you definitely learn more about Qui-Gon. And even I think in the book Master Window, you get a little bit more Qui-Gon too. I'm pretty sure that's the one. And Qui-Gon would have been amazing to train Anakin. That's, I think, one of the biggest things is because he wasn't so rigid. Obi-Wan from the very beginning in that book, he's very rigid. He's very to the rules. He's very much that person that like these are the rules, we don't go, off sides with them. And I think for Anakin, because he was older, because he grew up in a world where there were two parents in a way, even though he didn't have a father, his other siblings and or his other friends and stuff like that, they had fathers. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? He came up with an idea of a family, and the Jedi's don't have families necessarily, right? Like they grew up very differently. There's no real family dynamic, and he grew up with that family dynamic. And I think Qui-Gon would have been able to assist him because Qui-Gon had definitely a lot more experience of seeing the world, of understanding that family dynamic that Jedi don't have, that he was raised with. And I think he would have been able to navigate Anakin a lot better. Obi-Wan is very, very rigid, and you can see throughout the movies, he's still very, very rigid, you know? And there's a few moments where he has his little fun, right? But he's still very rigid. And he's an amazing character, amazing, swordsmith with the lightsaber and everything. But I don't think he was good for raising Anakin in that way of he's very much, very rigid, and Anakin needed someone that was a little bit more flexible. Like Mace Windu for the longest time I did not like. I did not like
Why?
Mace Windu's character. I thought he was egotistical. I thought he was very egotistical. I thought that he only thought of himself. I thought that he was even more rigid than Obi-Wan.
Hmm.
Um, but then I actually once I watched the movies and I actually took notes while watching the prequels and everything. And Mace Windu blew my mind because I was like, oh. And then I read his book and it made even more sense, And I was like, oh, he was right all along. How he went about it in the end was not good. I understand his reasoning, but he did not go about it very well. And so, but he was right about a lot of things. And his fear, though, of understanding Anakin and the dark side, though, I think is what blinded him in a lot of ways and blinded a lot of Jedi, is that that's what I liked about the sequels. Sorry, I know I'm going on a tangent.
No,
But
that's
what
fine. That's
I
fine.
liked about the sequels is that you had that balance of light and dark, right? With the Jedi, is that you have to understand both. And in the prequels, it was very much you completely reject the bad. But I think certain Jedi's like Qui-Gon understood the balance. I think Yoda understood the balance, but it took him time too. I think he also was blinded by the politicalness of Jedi in a way. I think that him being in Dagobah was more of his element because it was just the Force and everything. And I think that him being in the temple very much, he did his best, but I think that it did kind of um it lessened his power by being
Okay.
in that environment of the politics and the rules and everything else. I think that in Dagobah, I think he had actually balanced the good and the bad when he failed, right? Um, and that's just it, though, is that for Jedi, they're not really taught the good and the bad necessarily. They're kind of taught to reject the bad. That'll turn you to the dark side. And that's what's interesting is Anakin's story. If you watch the Clone Wars, then you know the moments that he was the chosen one and how he did reject it for Padme. And, if you don't watch the Clone Wars, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Look up the episode of him being the chosen one, and then, you'll understand that he was supposed to balance the good and the bad. And of course, a lot of people say in the end he eventually did, but that's just it, is that I think Qui-Gon would have been able to teach him the good and the bad and balancing those. And I think Obi-Wan was very much rules. Like we only go to the good. We only choose the good. We only, do it this way. Whereas Qui-Gon, he was a little bit more flexible. And that bothered Obi-Wan. If you've read the books and stuff, he that bothered him. Even if you watch the first episode, that bothered him. Where he was like, you could be on the Jedi Council. Obi-Wan didn't want it, or Qui-Gon didn't want it because he wanted to be able to be flexible. And he knew that being on the council wouldn't give him that.
Okay.
And that's what's kind of interesting. Sorry. I know
No,
way
no.
too much.
No, no, no. And see, well, it's your knowledge, your expertise is why you're here.
Yeah.
Like if I was sat down for an hour and tried to talk about Star Wars, I'd be like, I saw the original movie. It was good. then I watched the next one. Yeah, that'd be an hour of me talking about three movies. And you talk about the balance of the love and the being flexible and everything else. And I'll be honest, the first character I think about is Kwame. I think about the stranger. And the Acolyte itself was a wonderful series. It got so much hatred, but and I think it was unjust personally. Kwame was a great character because I don't think he was evil. I don't really think of Kwame as evil. I think of him as being he wanted to live. He had the power that he had. He wanted to be who he was. And yes, he had an evil some bitch in his ear telling him bad things. I get that. But, anybody has a bad day, they can turn from, you know, Senator Palpatine to Emperor Palpatine. It can happen to anybody. And I think Kwame is a good example of that, even though he's so far in the past before, the Emperor, and it's Pelagus is the one whispering in his ear in case somebody hasn't seen the series, and if you haven't, go watch it. But I will say this: every time you said the phrase "if you watch the Clone Wars," I feel a little attacked, and again, but I'm okay because I did not watch the Clone Wars. I can admit that like when I skipped the Clone Wars, I did watch the original uh, what was it, Adult Swim version of the Clone Wars.
Oh,
And
right. Yeah, the more anime version.
yes, I watched those back when they were first airing, loved them. I remember like downloading them illegally and burning them onto CD and DVD so I can rewatch them. But the other series, I went back and only watched episodes when Ahsoka started because there was certain things I needed to understand who these characters were. So I went back and I'd watch like I watched some Clone Wars, some Rebels, whatever. So I needed to know who they were, and that is the extent of my knowledge. Um, One of my I don't want to say the word friend, but an internet individual that I'm acquainted with, Cameron Duel. Shout out to Cameron Duel. If you're in the Pokemon, you know his name. But still, Cameron would always say, "You got to watch Clone Wars." I remember how excited he was when Clone Wars was coming back, and I never listened, and I probably wish and I've thought about it. I know my buddy Brian is watching right now because we're talking Star Wars, so I know he'll be watching, and he's probably saying the same thing. Like you got to watch Clone Wars, but so you've got
It's
people out there agreeing with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dedication though because it is so many seasons, and some episodes are just fun episodes.
Yeah.
Other episodes are definitely more intense and like you need to watch. If you are curious about, the prequels or just kind of more of even like the Jedi and stuff, it's an amazing series. And I definitely recommend it. But it's again, there were so many, episodes and stuff, and then they went back and did the last one, so because like I think the bonus season or something like that, where they had it like, unreleased ones that they had put as like the last season kind of, and then they completely went back and redid the last season in a way. It's definitely, yes, if you love Ahsoka, definitely watch it. And after that, definitely watch Rebels because that's definitely, part of the Ahsoka. And I know they're having a new season and stuff like that, which I'm excited about. But that's just it is like Star Wars, there's so much to it now. And I know some people say that that's a negative. I think it's amazing because we all can find like a show that we like.
Yeah.
We can all find a story we can connect to. Like you said, the Acolyte. I love the Acolyte. Why? Because it was different. And I think that that's so important too, though, is that like we're getting different stories, but none of them are the same. They're all different. Like one of the reasons why The Mandalorian was so popular was because it was so different, right? It was a Western space story, And
Yeah.
like a lot of people talk about how the originals were a space opera and everything, And so, like for instance, I loved Skeleton Crew. I loved Skeleton Crew. I thought it was just so much fun to experience Star Wars for the first time again in a completely different way, right? Because you're kind of going through the entire show almost like a kid. And it reminded me of me watching episode one and experience a whole new version of Star Wars and a whole new way and like being young and wanting to be a Jedi and and go on adventures throughout space. And it's just so fun. It brings back that fun. And but we also need things like Andor. We do need things like Alkalite to kind of also understand that this isn't a paradise.
Yeah.
That there are like downsides. There isn't, it's not all, no offense, Ahsoka. Like even Ahsoka has dark parts, but like these are also a family. And for the Alkalite, like sometimes we don't get that. Sometimes, Skeleton Crew, like they kind of had their own family, but it wasn't necessarily chosen. They were kind of forced. But it turned out great and amazing, and that was the same with the originals, right? Han and Leia did not like each other. Definitely enemies to lovers story right there, the sexual tension between those two, ooh. But that's just it though, is that like there's just so much for everyone. And some people are like, it's just not my thing. And I'm like, what have you seen? Because it's like, tell me what you like. I can probably recommend a Star Wars show or movie that might be up your alley, that might change your mind a little bit, because there's so much and they're so different. And you can find a story or a character that you can relate to or connect with in one way or another.
Yeah, and and that's there. I don't think there's ever a reason to say there's too much. There's too much. There's too much. As a Star Trek fan, we truly believe we need more. I
Yeah.
mean, and it's the same way. The Star Trek, that may be the one common denominator between Star Trek and Star Wars, and the eternal battle between the two for some reason, which they are night and day. Let's be honest with you. Star Wars and Star Trek are night and day. Star Trek is more of a utopian future, whereas Star Wars is everyone fighting for that future. And um, technically, Star Wars, you could say, had that future, had that peace and prosperity. You saw it being destroyed and then fighting for it, and is as close to reality as we're going to get right now. Um, and you need those stories. You need something that does resonate with somebody. Star Trek is the same way. There's people that hate certain shows and despise, like the most recent Star Trek series that was canceled, Starfleet Academy. People abhorred it, and would rip it apart for being, as I hate this word, too woke, and which I don't even understand the word woke. I don't understand what's woke. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I have caring and I have respect and I have understanding. Oh, well, you must be woke. I was like, oh, I woke up this morning, um, but yeah, it's so silly. It's why can't people just love things like you talk about Clone Wars? I have not seen Clone Wars. That doesn't mean I'm going to sit there and go screw Clone Wars. That's what that's some terrible stuff. I would never do that because I've never seen it. Even if I had seen it and something about it didn't resonate with me, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just not for me. Um, and I think that could be said for anybody. I mean, look at any show. There's shows. I'll tell you a really weird example. This is right off the beat. There's a show called Suits. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, about lawyers.
I've heard of it, yes.
Never seen it. Never seen it. Used to make fun of it all the time. I would not just because I'd see advertisements like, oh, there's Suits. And whatever. I have an acquaintance of mine, comic book artist, Tom Zoller. Shout out to Tom Zoller. Tom Zoller loves Suits, and he would always talk about Suits. I'd go see him. We would talk. He'd talk about, oh, you see Suits? No, because I don't know Suits. Suits LA came out, a sequel series. Love it. you know. Now, see, and that's the thing. The first one may not have been for me, but it did cause me to want to go back and check it out.
Yeah.
And Star Wars can be that way. Everything is decisive and everything, Um, it's like people that don't like one thing, like it could be something as simple as Jar Jar Binks. There's people that didn't like him, but now you look at Ahmed Best and he's amazing. Think about he saved Grogu. He is the
Yes.
Jedi that saved Grogu. And the actor himself went through so much bullshit because of the hate for a character when all he was doing was his job. And I hate that. I hate hearing about that. And it makes me feel bad for going, oh, I don't like Jar Jar Binks, but I never said I hated him. And then you see some
Yeah,
really terrible, terrible things people say. And that poor man did not deserve it. I'm thankful for Ahmed Best. I'm thankful because there are children. I'll use you as an example. I don't know if you like Jar Jar Binks,
I do.
but okay, but CNC that got you into Star Wars, and therefore I'm thankful to him for that because
Well, and that should sorry.
no, you no, please,
And that's the thing is that if you watch the prequel, like the prequels or whatever, and specifically the episode one, we needed that comedy relief.
yeah,
And that's just it, is that like in the originals you had Han Solo. He was kind of like the comedy relief, right? In a lot of ways. We didn't have that in episode one. Qui-Gon would kind of do a few things. Obi-Wan definitely did not. Padme was not, for obvious reasons, of course. But we needed that comedy relief, and he was the comedy relief that we needed to kind of break up the movie to make it fun for kids.
yeah,
And I think that that's just it, is that when you kind of look at the bigger picture and like what's happening as far as like characters and stuff like that, like we need that comedy relief sometimes. And Revenge of the Sith didn't really have that. Obvious reasons. It was more of a darker story. Attack of the Clones didn't quite have that either because it was a love story. The prequel was a fun story for kids to get them into Star Wars, to kind of bring Star Wars to a whole new generation. We needed that comedy relief. It was funny. It was the goofy of the Star Wars universe. And everyone loves Goofy. Well, most people do. I love Goofy.
I like Goofy.
Um, so like, and we needed that. And to kind of attack people and the actors and everything for playing a role, it's just stupid. And I just think that if you don't like something, fine. Like I used to be on dating apps and I would put in my bio, I love everything Star Wars. Within a message or two with matching someone, I would get a 5-page essay from a guy talking about how much he hates Star Wars. And I'm just like,
Why?
maybe not the place to do that. Also, I literally said I love everything Star Wars, and your first thing to do is do a 5-page essay on how it's terrible. Like, I don't understand that mentality. Like, there are things out there that people love that I don't like. I'm not going to do a 5-page essay telling you how you're wrong and how it's absolutely trash. Like,
Yeah,
I just don't see the point in that. Like, you can be critical, and the whole thing is you can disagree without being disagreeable. And I
yeah,
think that people nowadays do not understand that concept. They're like, I don't like it, therefore no one else should. And it's like, that's not reality. Okay. You don't like it, that's fine. That's your opinion, that's fine. But I think it's also hard because so many people nowadays have a platform to voice it. Back in the day, it was like you would kind of, I remember, I think it was Robert and Eager or something like that that would do film critics. They were film critics
oh,
and they would kind of tell you, I know I'm getting that words all wrong, but where they would actually do it, and like criticize a movie if they liked it or didn't like it, right? And that's just it too, is that yeah, exactly. And we don't have that kind of same journalism necessarily when it comes to things. Everyone can have an opinion, and that is great. But I think that some people don't understand that just because you don't like it doesn't mean everyone else has to hate it with you.
right,
And that you should attack the people that created it, because it's like the original Star Wars. Like he had no budget for that movie. That movie had no budget, Whereas you compare it to the, episode 4 and or no. Sorry, episode 5 and 6. I get confused sometimes. 5 and 6
okay,
had much better budget.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And that's just it, is that like, but people want it. That's why they keep creating it too, is because it does make them money. And there's a lot of people out there that do love it. And for me, example, like I try to seek out Star Wars fans that love Star Wars, that truly love Star Wars. There's a girl that literally had like a full size version of a Jar Jar Binks like lollipop holder from when the episode 1 came out. She actually had it like 3D printed for
wow,
her to have it and stuff. And it's just so cool to see how people still love Star Wars. And I'm sure for you, Star Trek, people, there's so many people that love Star Trek
Oh
and
yeah.
everything. But I think it's also hard because when it comes to sci-fi, it's very much always kind of advanced. And I think that some people aren't ready to have that conversation when it comes to sci-fi. Sci-fi is not living in the past, it is living in the future. And with, if you look at like a lot of like different show, like I'm gonna say The Fifth Element or whatever, people had different colored hair, people had different styles. You look at like the cyberpunk game where people can get plastic surgery, they can get piercings, they can get tattoos, they can, it's so much more like moving forward to accepting that you can be whoever you want to be. And I think that we still live in a world that is still kind of rejecting that idea, but sci-fi is, in a way, that future, right? Because we have different species, we have different planets, we have different ways of living, we have different personalities and different types and everything. And I don't think a lot of people are like ready for that. And some of them, they just don't want it. And that's fine. If that universe isn't for you, then maybe don't watch sci-fi, because sci-fi is very much woke, it's very much in that idea of acceptance and being creative and having colored hair, having body modifications, having piercings, tattoos, etc. Accepting that there are different shades of people, just like there's different species, in the sci-fi world. And it's a beautiful place. And that's our future though. And I think so many people are so wanting to live in the past. And it's like that's great. There are movies in the past. If you want to watch them, that's great. Sci-fi is the future. And it
Yeah.
always has been.
No, and you're absolutely right. And if anybody wants to be your friend, you're going to have to tell them where to find you when we get done in the end, because you need more Star Wars people in your life,
I know.
or and that in Star Trek. I mean, that's not, I mean, I like both. I like science fiction. Like let me look like Doctor Who. I'm looking ahead of me and things I have like Doctor Who, Godzilla, Stargate, Supernatural, Transformers, Star Wars, of course, Star Trek, The Invisible Man, Superman, Lost. I could go on. Battlestar Galactica. There's so many different things that are science fiction or adjacent to science fiction that I get pigeonholed into the Star Trek category, and that's fine. I am a Star Trek guy first and foremost, but I grew up on Star Wars at the same time. I mean, my sixth birthday was in 1983. I'm old, and my mom and my aunt and a few other relatives, they had taken me to Chuck E. Cheese. It was actually, it was a Chuck E. Cheese for my birthday that year, and I was so sick. It was such a terrible day, but I got to see Return of the Jedi in theaters that day. I got to vomit in my aunt and uncle's car. I got to get so many Star Wars action figures. I have some of them up on display back here. Like to me, that's a memory I'm going to hold on to forever. It's same as going to see Star Trek, like here's Return of the Jedi. Here's Return of the Jedi. And honestly, I think this is the best way to own it. I'm not into um the redos, but this is the original cut. This is on DVD, original cut, no special features, no special effects. Original theatrical 1983 version, Return of the Jedi, as it should be. And like I say, I tell people all the time, like, yeah, see now that's good, but these are
No, these
uncut.
have the original.
Do
These have
they?
the original too. Yes.
Okay, now see, I don't have that set then. Let me see the side of it. Oh, okay, let me see. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
okay, same
original
ones.
theatrical
Okay,
1977.
you
So
got the slipcase. You got the slipcase. I don't have the slipcase.
yeah, mine's like super skinny.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah, no,
cool.
I have them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Don't ever look those up on eBay. People give some high prices for that shit. Yeah.
So sorry to like transition. I actually worked at a used bookstore. We sold half price books. Many of you may have heard of it. I worked there, loved it. I would keep an eye out for different editions of the Star Wars movies because
Mhm.
I wanted to own the theatrical version. That came in and they priced it so low, and I was like, you did what? which was great for me because I got 50% off of it. So, I got it
Wow.
literally for $7.50. So for me, it was great. But that's just it, though, is like you can find the original theatrical versions. And in a way, that's why physical media is so important, is you can't find that streaming anywhere.
Yeah.
Chances of you even being able to buy it streaming, I don't think is possible because they've kind of erased it in a lot of ways, you know?
Yeah.
And I know there's good and bad, and I know why George Lucas did it. I know there's like, again, disagree to be just, disagree, but like I know why he redid it. And that's because he definitely saw a world that was definitely more technologically advanced than what he was given when he first made them.
Yeah.
And
Oh
so
yeah.
I understand that's why he went back and redid them. And that's just it, is those original movies, though, they advanced technology for movies. People don't talk about Star Wars as being an advancement in technology for movies, but it really actually was. His
Yeah.
company really did push a lot of different technology and like ways of like viewing certain scenes and stuff like that were definitely more advanced. We hadn't seen those scenes before in a lot of movies and stuff like that. They were very unique, and now we see them all the time, and it was very much advanced for its time. But if you do want like the original Cantina band and some of those different things, that's why physical media is so important, is because you can't change that.
Yeah.
Like I have that copy right there.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it was probably published before Disney, and Disney may never release the theatrical versions now that they own it. You know what I mean? So I
You
think that's
are
why
you
it's
are
so
correct.
important.
This is still 20th Century Fox before Disney. There is no Disney on here. You're 100% correct. Or
Yeah.
at least on the thick version.
Yeah, these are 2008 20th century.
Yeah, this man, yeah, 2008, same as I wonder why they did the thin and the thick. That's weird that they would do two versions.
So I know, I think I had a version similar to the one you had that came in a thicker slipcase.
Yeah.
It was like there was a gold one and there was a silver one. One
I
of them was
have
full screen and one was widescreen.
I have the widescreen silver one as well. I'll buy everything. I have those, and then I have episode one, two, and three that are matching, like the side panels match, so that you can and with the Roman numerals, so they all go together. And then I even have the Ewok Adventure and the Battle for Endor set that matches the so that you could put those with them as well. Um, and what's the other one? Oh, a bonus disc. I got some bonus disc that had like the R2D2 documentary where he was like,
Oh yeah, I've
you
seen
know,
that. It's so cute.
it is a good one. I have them on VHS as well. I have two boxes of VHSs open, and then I have one that's I think I got the gold box. I'm trying to look at it. Yeah, I got gold, I got silver, and then I have one that is uh, Chewbacca, Yoda, and Darth Vader on the VHSs, unopened. When my father passed away, one of the last things that he had bought for me for Christmas, he had found that, and he was going to give it to me for Christmas. And my stepmother ended up giving it to me later. But so I left it unopened, and it's like I if I need to watch it, I have it. I can open it. But I don't want
Yeah.
to open it. I feel wrong about opening it. But yeah, like I said, and that's the emotional thing that brings Star Wars around. There's always that connection. Um, I see that we're coming up really close on an hour, and there's so many other things. I could probably do a 7 hour video with you on Star Wars here. I do want to ask you, is there anything great? Like, what's the biggest, like, do you have things in your collection that you really truly love that you think people will be like, this is what you need to find for Star Wars Day, you know?
I don't know about that, but you said big, so this is probably the biggest item that I have, which is this gigantic Star Wars battleship version.
Wow.
It's freaking huge, as you can tell.
You sunk my
Um,
Star Destroyer.
yes, the fighter destroyed. It has A-wing, X-wing, Y-wing, Rebel transport, Star Cruiser, TIE fighter, the Interceptor, the bomber, Victory Star Destroyer, and Imperial Star Destroyer. Real voices and sounds from the Star Wars trilogy.
That's
This
awesome.
the biggest thing I have. I have a lot of board games. This was 1997 is when it was made.
Oh,
And then of
wow.
course I have like super small stuff too. Like for instance, this baby,
Aw.
this little I
Look
got a
at it.
whole bunch of them, of course, Jar Jar. But I literally
Oh,
got these in like bath bombs. This was of course before the sequels, I think I came out or whatever, but I got them bath bombs. And they look like Darth Vader, and so you would drop them in and you would get a little toy. Just random stuff, honestly. And then of course I have this that I got from a
no,
special
yeah.
person, aka you. I bought this off of you. So like I have stuff like that. I have this thing is super cool. This
Oh,
is
wow.
from
Holocron.
yes,
That's awesome.
the Sith one. I need to get the Jedi one next time. And then I have like silly little things like this. This is a Star Wars crossword puzzle or word puzzle.
I
This
dig
is
it.
from 1984.
Wow.
So
Huh.
I haven't used it yet or anything. But so I have like a lot of random stuff. I also have like for example, I have this book.
No, that's cool. I love it.
And so it's so fun because it's so random, you know what I mean? Where's the Wookiee? And that's the thing is now there is so much products for Star Wars that I really try to hold back and find unique stuff and try to kind of get the more unique stuff or things that like are fun to experience. Like my uncle randomly like took us, me and my
Oh,
family,
wow.
to downtown Disney, and I got this book at the Star Wars trading post or whatever, and it's so cool though. It has like a whole thing.
Okay,
It's
so
myths
okay,
and fables,
okay, so
and
this
it
goes back. This is the like what, 1,000 years in the past or 10,000 years in the past?
I don't know, like the Knight and the Dragon, the droid with a heart, like it has a lot of like different things, but I'm pretty sure it's like for the past. But that's just it, is like
That's awesome.
I randomly went there. This was the only copy they had at the time. I've tried to like look up more information on it. There's not too much. But that's just it, is like I try to go for a little bit more uniquer items because Star Wars is so vast. They're always doing collection for it now and stuff like that. And that's the thing, is for me, one of my I'm just gonna say my one of my greatest experiences of Star Wars was going to a Star Wars celebration. And it was small. It was before, it was literally days after they announced The Force Awakens.
Wow.
Now, it was so tiny, it was fan made. And so the energy there was so amazing because everyone there was a super nerd. They had Lego sets that did complete battle scenes there. They had, of course, like fans dressed up in costume and like little photo areas and stuff like that. They had panels, but it was just like an auditorium room. There was I think they're called themselves the Mandalorian mercs, but I know like there's different facets of it now or whatever. But they literally was like telling people how they created their own armor, because again, this was before Mandalorian. This
Wow.
was before any of that. So this was people who had taken the lore and just ran with it, right? Created their whole universe, created their own costumes, and they were literally talking to you about how they did it and how amazing that was. And then there was a small brand at the time that did lightsabers, and they were showing you how you can personalize a lightsaber through their site and stuff like that. But again, this was very indie. This was very small. This was like, there was little like kind of swap meet vendors that had like episode one items, and like, but they were super cheap, because, but like they were still unique because at that time there wasn't a lot of merch, right? Because after the prequels, the merch just kind of disappeared. Every once in a while, you would find something.
Yeah.
And it was always like kind of like a treasure hunt when you did find something. It was like, oh my God, there's a Star Wars mug. Whereas now it's everywhere and
Yeah.
everything. So I think though experiencing that at that time was absolutely amazing. The energy was amazing. I absolutely love Star Wars, but I'm definitely not a Star Wars versus Star Trek. I really enjoyed the latest Star Trek movies. When I was a baby, I actually apparently watched Star Trek with my one of my great uncles.
Well, your uncle's a
I
good person.
I don't remember it too much because I was legit a baby, but like I would literally just sit there with him and watch it. I love the latest movies. I know when the first Star Wars like movie came out in my era, they had the glasses at Burger King, and I actually still have those.
Mine are
They're
down
still
here.
yeah, still have those. Because I guess growing up they would used to collect them, my family, and so we had to get them because they used to collect them growing up because they would have those special things.
Yeah.
Um, I just think like when you're part of a fandom and people really root for you and enjoy your fandom and support you and your love and maybe disagree with you but aren't disagreeable, I think that it's just such a beautiful community and it's really fun and amazing. And I'm so glad that you have this podcast and that, you are bringing so many more people to the limelight that are into Star Trek, that are part of the Star Trek universe in their own little way too, which is awesome. And it's cool that you have this outlet for like other Star Treks to come together and be able to talk about Star Trek, but also obviously other things because it's May 4th and we're talking about Star Wars. But just that, we all can be in the same, kind of sci-fi world and still enjoy what we like and, disagree maybe a little bit on what we don't, but not be disagreeable, support each other and our love for whatever, brings us joy.
Oh yeah, and that's I appreciate that and well said by the way. Yeah, Star Wars today. I mean, I've got a couple of people. I thought like I want to do a Back to the Future episode one day. I want to do a Simpsons episode one day. And I've reached out to people and I was like, hey, you want to do it? And they're like, yeah. And it's like, all right, it's been 8 months. Let's get on it. But and then like you mentioned the Star Wars Celebration. My friend Jason Grahowski, he's hopefully watching. He's gone to a few of them specifically in Japan. I know he went to one in London to Star Wars Celebration. He's a big Star Wars guy. He collects the oh what not Black Series, not original. It was the muscle one, the ones where they're all muscle figures in the 90s. I can never remember what those are called. And he's gonna smack me for this. But anyways, they're he collects those figures specifically, and he's always helped me with my Star Trek stuff. Great guy. I'd like to get him on here one day. And I had thought about him for Star Wars, and I thought, no, no, I think you're the bigger Star Wars fan. And and
It's crazy. You're not the first person to tell me that, but like it's crazy because I'll see other people online that have like rooms dedicated to Star Wars, and I just don't have the means for that. But if I did, I probably would. So I get it. I love Star Wars so much, and it's without Star Wars, I don't know if I would still be here. So, Star Wars is definitely embedded in me. And I mean, I was born on the same day as George Lucas. So like it makes sense.
well,
So thank you for
I haven't asked who's your favorite character. Whoa, that's like I know.
that. Um, I think it varies. It changes for different reasons, right? Like
Okay.
my favorite bad guy, of course, is Darth Vader, but all of Darth Vader, even Anakin. And just his entire story arc and everything is so amazing and it's a beautiful tragedy and but it's so telling and beautiful, right? Because I mean, love can be destructive if it's not healthy. And I think that that's a big, way to see that whole story. For the good guys, I of course love Padme. I think that she's definitely an underrated character. People don't think of her, but like the way she fought, that was the thing is she was definitely, her and Leia, I mean, they're not damsel in distresses.
No.
They'll, like they'll take their own, future into their hands and they'll fight, and I love that, especially for being a woman. Like that's so important to have. And they're somewhat complex too, right? They're not perfect little, they got attitudes, they kind of do it things their own way. As far as like Jedi though, I have to say it's changed over the years, but I really do like Obi-Wan.
Okay.
And that's kind of changed throughout the years, but like I feel like now that I'm older and I see his story arc, like with his series and everything, like he really did go through a lot at such a young age. And the way he was raised in a way and everything is just so interesting. But of course, I love Yoda. I love Grogu. Ahsoka is awesome. There it's just there's so many. It's hard to say. I have to say, I will say though, my favorite movie is Rogue One, which
Oh,
isn't part of the sequels. It's not, part of original trilogy. It's not part of the sequels. Is a Rogue One. I think though George Lucas would have loved that movie,
oh yeah.
or like absolutely loves that movie and Andor. But the thing is that he couldn't make that movie. If he killed the entire cast, it would have been a bloodbath for him. He wouldn't have survived the fandom, okay? He barely made it out alive after the prequels, okay? Um, but that story, if you look at Darth Vader's arc and you look at that story, it has the same vibe. It has that same kind of darkness to it. And I'll always love Rogue One. Like when people are like, "Oh, I don't know about Star Wars," I'm like, "Watch Rogue One." See
The
if you
and
like the universe and everything.
Well, and it means so much more if you've seen Andor. Watch
Yes.
Andor, then watch Rogue One, and you're like, oh, it's like, oh my God. That's exactly what I did. I went from one to the other. A couple of rapid fire questions for you here, so we can.
Sorry.
We're
I
running
try.
short on time. What's your lightsaber color?
Red.
All
Pink
right,
if it's possible. Pink if it's possible, but red is the next one. Yeah.
it's Star Wars. Anything is possible, you know.
That's true. Mace
And
Windu made that point with his purple.
yeah, I mean, and think about. I love that scene in Acolyte when it goes from blue to red. It's
Yes.
like,
That was
oh,
beautiful. So
al-
beautiful.
almost purple. You know. Now, how about comic books? Are you a Star Wars comic book reader?
I've read a few. I know that there's the Darth Vader ones, and then
Hmm.
there's the Doctor Alpha, I think there is.
Afra, Dr. Afra,
Yeah,
yeah.
Afra, and stuff. I haven't read too many of them. I know I
Okay,
have them somewhere, I think, in my Star Wars collection.
awesome.
Um, but I haven't read too many of them. I've read a few. I do like them. I think they're very interesting.
Cool. Okay, and you talked about Star Wars books. Did you ever read the Vader one where it talked about like it was after Return of the Jedi and he had just gotten the suit and it described like the bolt that was hitting him when he would step. Did you ever read that one?
I did not read, so I just got into the Star Wars books honestly a couple of years ago. So I
Okay.
haven't read what was originally the canon ones to the trilogy.
Okay.
I
I'll have to figure
unfortunately
out
did
what
not.
that's called and I'll send you a link or show you what it is. It's probably my I think it's just Vader. I think it's just called Vader, but it came out and it was like right after episode 3 and it's so good. It is. I'll call my buddy. I can't call him today. He's at work. I was gonna say I'd call my buddy Brian. And I ask him because I borrowed it off of him. I don't own the book, but it's so good. I'll make sure I send you a picture and it'll be on the screen for
Nice, thank you.
everybody to check out. Yeah. I totally enjoyed this. Like I said, I
Me
think we
too.
could have went on for a few, for a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yes.
That makes no sense. But 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 no, this. Do you want to tell anybody where they can find you and how they should follow you? And I think they should.
I'm mostly on Instagram, under at that babe Cerise, Ceres. I also do have a YouTube channel. I don't use it. Thought about starting like to post videos, just never got around to it. But I'm mostly on Instagram. That's like my main thing.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be on the screen so everybody can click on it and find you and everything else. Maybe I'll even make it into a QR code. I don't know. I've been having fun with QR codes lately. But well,
And if you
I
and if you like this, be sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell.
there you thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, yeah, I need more subscribers. I need more people to watch. I'm not making any money off of this. I'm not asking for Patreons. I don't want your money. I just
It's
want
just
your
for fun. It's just for us as a community to come together and geek out, and it's
Yeah,
great.
exactly. It's just for fun. And that's what it's about. So, and I appreciate all of your time and may the fourth be with you.
May the
Have
fourth
a
be with you
I
and
hope you
everyone
have an
watching.
amazing Star Wars day.
You as well. Live long and prosper.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You don't know the power of the dark side.